This is true courage.
Infinite Warfare is the latest entry in the Call of Duty franchise, developed by Infinity Ward and published by Activision for PC, Xbox One, and PS4, and has been one of the biggest disappointments of 2016 for me. I can still remember when the first trailer for this came out. Out of the literal shitstorm of hate, I was one of the few voices that believed that not only could this turn out to be good, but also be a classic like Modern Warfare. And boy was I wrong. While this isn't even close to being a terrible game, it doesn't come close to the quality of previous COD games either.
Let's get out there.
Now, the single player does make a valiant effort to change things up and make good use of the sci-fi setting to introduce some new ideas to the core gameplay. Unfortunately though, thanks to the tried and tested COD formula, these changes either end up underutilized or clash with the established formula. Like the much hyped wall running and double jumping. While these are nice additions, they really don't add anything to the game. These worked in Titanfall 2 because that game had big open areas and the gameplay had a faster pace. Two design choices that really allowed those features to really add something. Whereas in Infinite Warfare, the levels are primarily linear and tight, and the gameplay is considerably slower, which results in these abilities having no real use other than to make yourself a bigger target, or to beat a quicker retreat when you need to heal up. Hell, I can only remember one or two moments where you actually had to use the wall running to move forward. But at least the new equipment introduced in this setting work out pretty well, and can actually be a lot of fun to play around with. Like spider grenades that latch onto enemies, a bulletproof shield that can unleash a devastating melee attack, and a hacking tool that lets you seize control of robotic enemies and turn them into gun-toting suicide bombers. But outside of fooling around with those, you're pretty much just going to be doing what you've been doing in every COD game since Modern Warfare 3, which really has just gotten stale at this point. Sure, the game looks nice and there's a great deal of impeccable polish in every area, but it rarely stands out as anything truly noteworthy. For instance, you're given command of a battleship called the Retribution, and while this seems exciting at first, it just ends up an excuse to introduce a hub area, where you can watch newsreels and use a mission select screen, which come to the campaign's detriment. You can select either story missions or side missions to earn perks, and while this is a cool change, it quickly dawned on me that if they just made the usual linear campaign, this game would actually have a lot more content. Because making these secondary missions clearly took time, money, and resources that could have been used in the main story to ensure that it actually reached its maximum potential. Instead, we get a campaign that's technically nearly over after the third mission, and a good number of secondary missions that we're free to skip in case we don't want to play them. If nothing else, at least the secondary missions and even one or two of the story missions do make an effort to change things up at the core. Like this horror-inspired section on a mining station trapped on a hurtling asteroid.
Looks like his neck is broken. You hurt, Lieutenant?
She's good, Cash.
Those types of sections are crap tons of fun, but it's not enough to distract from a certain niggling feeling.
Drones must be tied to the power then.
Good call, Mom.
This game is just like COD Ghosts. The only time it stands out is when it is trying something genuinely new, like the sections when you're floating in space, or when space battles are introduced. Out of everything introduced in the single player, the space battles had the most potential to be something great, and they just end up being adequate. The sense of speed and intensity that piloting one of these in real life would have has been well realized, and the controls are tight and intuitive enough, but the actual dogfighting is way too simplistic. I only died once or twice thanks to the game's main bug-out maneuver, popping out flares. Every dogfight just boils down to you following an enemy, locking onto them so it becomes an on-rails shooter, tilting your crosshair just ahead of their path, popping flares when missiles are incoming, and occasionally firing your own missiles for extra damage. The space combat really would have benefited from greater complexity. Nothing like free space, mind you, but something more in-depth than just flying free, then putting yourself on rails. Now, what about the story, I hear you ask? It's shit. No, really, this is fucking terrible. I get that Call of Duty isn't regarded for its storytelling traditions, but with the exception of World at War Final Fronts, every COD game I've played has had either a well-written or engaging narrative. With Infinite Warfare, you'd think the conflict between the Earth government and the Mars Settled Defense Front would be about something like Mars justifyingly lashing out over a misdeed, true or false, committed by Earth, and taking their reaction too far. But nope! Mars is just populated with cunts. Cunts so big that they pretty much just want to commit what amounts to Earthborn genocide. There is some backstory to why this is all happening, but it's not well conveyed. And as far as I could tell, Mars is still pissed over something called the Secession Wars, which I guess they won? But even then, it doesn't give much of a reason or context as to why they're so cunty. The Settlement Defense Front just ends up becoming a painfully cartoonish metaphor for modern-day Russia in a villain role. And the worst offense to this fact is the antagonist, Admiral Koch.
Get him up, he needs air.
Played by and based on the likeness of Jon Snow himself, Kit Harington, Koch was a missed opportunity for a memorable villain. Instead, he just ends up being a joke. When he's first introduced, what does he do? He shoots one of his own men just to show how evil he is.
Cloud's judgment.
No, really, he does that. What's worse is that he never undergoes any substantial development, we don't learn anything about him or why he's so dead set on destroying Earth's government. It's a literal case of what you see is what you get. I'm not going to sit here and say COD has had some of the best villains in gaming history, but they have put more effort into them before and even made some memorable ones with the likes of Makarov, Menendez, and Jonathan Irons. If only because of Kevin Spacey. As for the multiplayer, what can I say about it other than it's what you'd expect? It's the same refined experience that we've always been getting since Modern Warfare. There are some new additions, as far as I could tell, that add some depth to the experience. Basically now when you choose a loadout, you can choose an armor type that makes some basic tweaks to things like health and speed, and they also come with some super weapons. Earn enough points in a match and you can make everyone your bitch for a limited amount of time. But while these are nice additions, they just end up like the wall running and the double jumping. They don't add anything of real substance to the experience since the core gameplay hasn't been changed to better complement it. All the wall running and the double jumping really does in multiplayer is make it easier to quickly move around the more open areas of the maps, rather than, give you any tactical advantage. Honestly, I was kind of bored while playing the multiplayer, and don't even get me started on the microtransactions. I know they were introduced in Black Ops 3, but they kinda hurt the experience for me. While it's still possible to earn the weapons and add-ons by playing the actual game, there's no getting around the fact that every time I use the Quartermaster, it feels like everything has been unnecessarily gated off, and I have to jump through an extra set of hoops just for the right to play with a futuristic AK-47 with a holographic scope.
Not bad. Not great, but not bad.
Then there's the zombies mode. This is hands down the best part of the game. Granted, I was disappointed when I found out Infinity Ward wasn't bringing back the infestation mode from Ghosts, because that felt like an actual evolution of the zombies mode. This feels like they took a step back from infestation and then took a step forward in a completely different direction. It's almost identical to all the zombies modes made by Treyarch, except now we have tangible objectives to pursue and an inventory of limited power-ups that are a lot of fun to play with. And the starting map, Zombies in Spaceland, is brimming with charm and personality with its 80s horror theme and cameo by David Hasselhoff. But there's no getting away from the feeling that rather than take a further gamble by adding to Ghost's infestation mode, the devs decided to just play it safe and copy what Treyarch does. If nothing else, if I ever buy any of the map packs for this game, it's just gonna be for the zombie maps.
Somebody get me out of the penalty box!
As a whole, Infinite Warfare is a game that's full of potential but just ends up being alright almost all of the time. I can't recommend this to anyone who isn't 12 years old or curious like I was. And if you're still pissed off over how Activision handled the Modern Warfare remaster, then I'd recommend you steer clear entirely. If Activision ever pursues an Infinite Warfare 2, they should make it an independent IP. Free it from the shackles and restrictions of Call of Duty and its dead set formula, and let it experiment like a uni student does with their sexuality. As it is, Infinite Warfare is a well-made but disappointingly run-of-the-mill shooter.
Death is no disgrace.
captain has the con.
Alright, thanks for watching. If you really like this video, then how about you also like, favorite, and subscribe. I've got some other gaming videos as well as some movie videos that you might want to check out, and soon I'm going to have videos out on the top 5 and bottom 5 movies of 2016. Got all that and more coming up, so you're going to want to stick around.